Will Manassas see 100 low-income housing homes come to the city? Well, we'll have to wait until January for that answer. The city council last night took up a plan, or at least heard about it, to put attainable, affordable, low-income housing, whatever you want to call it, near the city's airport at the landing at Cannon Branch. There was some people who came out in support of it. There was some opposition to the plan. For more on this, I'm going to bring in our friend Lynn Forkell-Greene, former city council member and Potomac local news contributor on this, who was at the meeting last night. Lynn, thanks for coming on the PLN podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So you were at this meeting last night. So I want to get to what you heard, some of the opposition here, but just breaking this whole plan down, the city is considering a proposal from Good Housing Virginia to build a 100-unit low-income housing complex on the former DMV site at the landing at Cannon Branch. So the project is the first proposal directly tied to the city's 2045 comprehensive plan housing goals, which calls for more affordable housing. So we're looking at 100 units targeted toward people earning between 40 and 70% of the area median income. It's roughly about $1,200 to $220 a month, $2,200 per month. And they're saying that it's going to be for teachers, police officers, firefighters, nurses, other essential workers. So this is going to be built on a piece of land the city has owned for years. And the developer is going to, if approved, purchase the land for $3 million. They're going to build the project is going to cost $35 to $37 million. And if it gets the green light, they're going to raise the old DMV building that later became a bill payment center for residents who wanted to pay their water or utility bills. But this is really the first time the city has talked about wanting to do a direct deal for low-income housing for those I guess the categories of employees that we talked about earlier: teachers, nurses, police, fire, and rescue. So you were there last night. What was your reaction to all this, and what did you see?
Oh, of course. So first, let me just correct. It's not the first time that the city has had this discussion. In fact, I believe maybe 2 years ago, there was already a building whose tax credits were about to expire near the downtown area, right behind Osborne High School. And the lion's share of the council nixed that project. And there have been different projects that have been voted in and maybe haven't come to fruition, especially for veterans. So I want the city to, this has been something they've been doing for a while when I was on the board. I would say that last night, what was happening was interesting in the sense that instead of meeting the promises to the residents at the landing of Cannon Branch in focusing on the commercial vision and partnership that was supposed to be there for those homeowners, we have skipped to infilling the remaining residential aspirations of that project, if you will, which is not wrong. There were I think 200 plus residential piece that Patrick Small discussed last night briefly. And this is where the city sort of says, like, you've always known this, but yet the promises and the progress have not intersected for these residents. So in a very short amount of time, because as you know, most of our residents do not travel far to the city council retreat where this might have been discussed more broadly. That is something that's held far away from the city typically, and residents do not typically pay attention to that meeting. This is the first time these residents have heard about this project.
And so
that said, point, this project is now...
Yeah, I mean, so you bring up a good point about the landing at Cannon Branch, and we're showing some video that I shot when I was out there last week. That's the old the DMV building right now. I don't believe it's being used for anything at this point. It was a DMV for years. The city's always owned it. I think leased it or rented it out to the DMV to conduct business there. But to your point, this landing at Cannon Branch came about 10 years ago, and it was advertised as the city's first waterfront property, waterfront term kind of use loosely there because it's a stormwater retention pond that it's in front of near the intersection of Princeway and Parkway and Route 28. But all that aside, this was supposed to be a bustling business district that was supposed to include a hotel, which it does, and I think another hotel is coming on the way. But it was supposed to be anchored by a very large brewery, a heritage brewery that never got off the ground. Matter of fact, I remember being there for a ribbon cutting the governor held. Governor Terry McAuliffe at that spot, heralding this big brewery that was supposed to be there, and it never materialized. And so we're still sort of waiting on this walkable district that the residents of the landing at Cannon Branch were promised, and now we're shifting and looking at putting affordable housing here.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. You know, when the residents are saying we were told one thing and got another, they're responding to the gap between the original vision, what they purchased into was the original vision, and the current reality. And I really don't blame them about that. I think most people would feel that way. What's frustrating is the city likes to say, oh, but it's in the comprehensive plan, or this was always in the original vision. And we sort of gaslight the residents that are here saying, but we have this problem that we're trying to fix, and we were voted in to fix this problem. And all the things can be true at the same time. And we really should focus on the fact that our public hearing process has been broken for a very long time. And when you check all the legal boxes and you do all the things and people still feel left out, it's not working, it's broken. And I've run on that, I've talked about that. It's been my mission to bring the voices of our community to the political process, and that's why I'm still involved today, because the advocacy never stops. And so instead of gaslighting our residents by saying, oh, they're NIMBYs, not in my backyard, they don't want this if it's in their backyard, that's not what they're saying. They're saying, hey, you're bringing something to us that is going to have a parking issue. The Manassas city area has a huge parking issue. We've been dealing with that for years. The council's well aware. Any project that is coming here that does not have 2 spaces per unit is already underparked. It doesn't matter. We're going to have a parking issue. And we know that.
And in addition to that parking issue that the residents talked about last night when the city held its final meeting of 2025 last night. And in addition to that parking issue, opponents of the project said there are no sidewalks. It's not transit accessible. There are no grocery stores around. There are very few playgrounds or walkable services around. To your point, the parking shortage, you only have 150 spaces for 100 units. And then there was also concerns that were voiced last night about Section 8. Residents felt that the messaging around that topic was inconsistent. There's also some fear of property values going down, properties surrounding this development, the properties will be going down. So what they came out for and asked for last night was a delay in the vote. They want a direct meeting with the developer, which again is Virginia Good Housing, and more transparency. They want more information from the city council.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I give the council credit specifically. Teresa Coates Ellis was very vocal in the challenges that are still surrounding this part of it. And, you know, Councilman Wolf, he did propose the date of January 26th, which may seem frustrating to those who don't understand the process, but because there's not a December meeting, and that's going to be the second and last meeting in January, they're giving 6. So that's 6 again, meet with the developer. So we for the HOA, and there was to continue working with their council members and staff. And that it gives time for a little buffer with the holidays that are here, because most of us already have plans with our family or to travel for the holidays. So you have some time here, and that's good. I think what really came out, you know, and I've supported attainable housing for years. I think what I've learned is what you've talked about in the beginning. All these words have different definitions: workforce housing, attainable, low income, affordable. And we sort of interchangeably use these words, and the definitions are never sort of nailed down. And that's one thing we saw in the proposal last night. When he starts talking about the income ratio and who can get in there, what the legal parameters of how we can have priority residence, we cannot discriminate in a federal way. That is prohibited under the equal housing laws. So to be able to have priority residents that fall under the workforce housing, that was really not well discussed. There's a list of priority people, and then it's a list of people that are on the list if the priority list is empty. But it didn't really say this will be 90% workforce. It can't say that. It won't say that. And I think that that's the challenge that the residents have with it. Some of the other numbers that were presented from projects that this developer has done before, I think at a quick glance, you're looking at less than 25 workforce categories. Really, it doesn't mean that these people are bad or the other occupations are less than. It just means we're trying to get a true definition of what this project will be. So I think what we learned last night is I'm not 100% on board with this project. I don't think the residents are. Community involvement. I think, when you really look at the fact that the landing still doesn't have the commercial services, transit, or walkability that were promised to the original residents, one has to take a pause in them, but we built the rooftops and these things have not come. So how can we take a pause and really make this a priority venture to more accurately get to what we promised these homeowners who are already here and whose voices should matter just as much as those we're trying to recruit into our city? Because remember, at one time, we recruited these people into our city, and now we're telling them their voices don't matter as much.
And there were some people who came out in support of the plan at last night's meeting, and they're saying that housing is essential to keeping young adults, teachers, and shift workers in Manassas, and that low-income housing is needed to prevent Manassas
because I
from
can't hear you. So I'll talk a little bit and just say, also, I think one interesting thing that came up last night.
Yeah, I think we're having some audio issues here. So, but I think there are some supporters in the room
I can hear you now.
that it's key to supporting aging adults, and it put in they say the long. So it supports multiple people who otherwise couldn't afford to live in the city. But it's also important to note that for a long time, Manassas was the affordable place to live in Northern Virginia. When you compare it to DC and Northern Virginia, other places, Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun County, Manassas used to be the affordable place to go. But apparently that has changed.
Manassas City is still more affordable than those places. And I would say that Teresa Coates Ellis, Councilwoman Ellis, brought up a very fabulous point, which I'm going to bring up, is that, this council likes to find solutions all the time for affordability, but they don't like to manage the tax rate. And so you can continue to do these strategies. And if we continue to tax people out of their homes, that is why people leave us. And so once you give people raises, and I think Mr. Wolf brought up, Vice Mayor Wolf brought up a great point, saying our entry-level teachers are almost already making too much to be in these apartments, almost. So when you think about the work that's already been done on these other sides, it's not that we've been stagnant on the issue. It's that, have we outgrown this project already? Or do we need to be honest about what this project is? Does it really fall under workforce housing? I'm not saying it won't capture 5 or 6 people, but if we're not capturing 60, 70, 80%, is it really workforce housing? And I don't know that you can say that at this time. I would first right of refusal would hope that any plan that gets approved, the city does retain that first right of refusal. That would be key to safeguard the public in the future.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there, but we can wrap up and say the public hearing is complete. The public engagement, I guess, is still ongoing. The city council has decided to come back on January 26th of 2026 to come back and make a final vote on that. So we will be watching. Thank you, Lynn, for coming on the PLN podcast. And thank you all for joining us today here on the PLN podcast. If you want more local news, please go to potomaclocal.com and sign up for our free local news email. I send it out every day.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
With more, thank you for coming on. With local news you just won't find anywhere else. And if you're watching on YouTube, we want you to be our newest YouTube subscriber. Please like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We need your help as we reach 1,000 YouTube subscribers. We want you to be our next YouTube subscriber. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day.